do was pay off the redemption arcs of characters like Jaime, the Hound, and Theon. In the comments of that video, I had several people ask why I didn't mention Melisandre alongside those other characters, and the answer to that is what makes her an interesting character in my opinion. That's what this video will look at, so let's jump into it. Melisandre fits the definition of a zealot perfectly. Early on, you might wonder if she's just a charlatan who uses religion to get over on people, but it becomes clear as the story goes on that she actually believes what she tells people about R'hllor. Generally speaking, zealots are not the most likable people. They only care about one thing, and if you don't care about it, they're likely trying to convert you to their way of thinking. On another level, they're problematic because their belief is probably misplaced. Magic exists in the world where Melisandre lives, and she's definitely plugged into that. R'hllor, on the other hand, probably doesn't exist, so it can be a real drag to have this character around that's always droning on about him. So why do I like her, and why did I really like this end? First, the obvious stuff, the magic. Even though she's likely wrong about her god, she does some crazy things with magic in his name. A zealot that can bring forth a shadow baby or bring a main character back to life is far more interesting than any religious fanatic I've met in real life. The religious aspect of the story and how that relates to the magic that exists is interesting to think about. Plus, Carice Van Houten gives a great performance that makes the character stand out even if you hate everything about her. Everyone was expecting her to show up for the Battle of Winterfell because her stated purpose was to fight against the Long Night. Her entrance was amazing as she lit the Arax on fire, and right from the beginning we can see she's confident about her purpose. There's a quick exchange where she says Valar Morghulis to Grey Worm, and he responds with Valar Dohaeris. It's a customary saying in Valyrian that people in the East use to greet each other. All men must die, all men must serve. This is when I got really pumped up about her role in the battle because it hints at a part of her character that we don't really think about. While what she'll do here will maybe lighten your feelings about the horrible things she's done, Melisandre isn't looking for redemption. Jon sent her away for burning Shireen, and rather than looking for the error of her ways, she doubled down. It's not clear what she did in Volantis when she went there. I think most of us expected that she would return with the Fiery Hand, or at least some other red priest and priestess to aid the side of the living in the battle. I mean, they are fighting what they believe to be their god's arch rival. I would guess that she went there to counsel with others from her faith at the temple, and through that gained clarity of what she had to do. To get a better idea about what makes Melisandre a fantastic character, you have to take a look at the source material. In her one point of view chapter in the books, there's a lot of different things going on. We find out that she's basically fueled by magic. She doesn't really need to sleep. She doesn't think that she has time to sleep. She's haunted by nightmares. She doesn't need to eat necessarily. She really just does that so that people won't think she's weird, that she's not eating. Like, she doesn't want men to see that she doesn't need to eat. We also get to see her look into the flames and get an idea of what that looks like. In this passage, she sees the three-eyed raven in Bran. A face took shape within the hearth. Stannis, she thought, for just a moment. But no, these were not his features. A wooden face, corpse white. Was this the enemy? 1,000 red eyes floated in the rising flames. He sees me. Beside him, a boy with a wolf's face threw back his head and howled. As readers, it's easy for us to figure out who this is because we know what Bran's up to. But you can see how the visions can be hard to interpret. A boy with a wolf's face could be anyone without context. We also realize that the magic takes a toll on the Red Woman and that her past haunts her. The Red Priestess shuddered. Blood trickled down her thigh, black and smoking. The fire was inside her, an agony, an ecstasy, filling her, searing her, transforming her. Shimmers of heat traced patterns on the skin, insistent as a lover's hand. Strange voices called to her from days long past. Melanie, she heard a woman cry. A man's voice called Lot 7. She was weeping, and her tears were flame, and still she drank it in. The most likely interpretation of this is that this is her childhood. Her name was actually Melanie. The woman's voice she hears was probably her mother. And the Lot 7 is a reference to her being sold at a slave auction. So we know she has a tough past. We know she was a slave, that basically she was a sex worker at the temples. And here we get the idea that hundreds of years later, or whatever it turns out to be, that these things still bother her regularly. Because there is so much going on in this chapter, as it's been anticipated, like, what is Melisandre doing? When you get to this chapter, you're like, wow, I'm going to finally find out what's going on inside Melisandre's head. There's a part that you could easily pass over. And I didn't really pick up on this in the first reading. Sometime around the end of the 5th season, after she burned Shireen, I was looking into the character, and I came across a quote from George R.R. Martin saying that he thought Melisandre was probably one of the most misunderstood characters in the book. So I went back and read the chapter, and as I was apt to do at the time, started reading everything I could find about what he meant by that. There was a Tumblr post that I read at that time, and I kind of absorbed it into my headcanon, and I will put a link to that. I found it online earlier today. Put a link to that in the description. But there's this one passage where she talks about Davos's son. It's his last remaining son after the Battle of Blackwater, and we find out that she requested that he stay with her when Stannis marched on Winterfell. Melisandre's at the wall, of course. It says, "In truth, he was here because Melisandre had asked for him. The 4 eldest sons of Davos Seaworth had perished in the battle on the Blackwater when the king's fleet had been consumed by green fire. Devon was the 5th born and safer here with her than at the king's side. Lord Davos would not thank her for it, no more than the boy himself, but it seemed to her that Seaworth had suffered enough grief. Misguided as he was, his loyalty to Stannis could not be doubted. She had seen that in her flames." So we see here that Melisandre does actually care. This shows us that Melisandre is not evil, and she does care about others. She just believes in her purpose more, and everything she's doing for the right reasons in her mind. She's keeping herself alive with magic despite the pain and suffering she's endured. You can make an argument that her devotion to the Lord of Light is a way of coping with the trauma she's experienced. However you look at it, her story is about sacrifice more than redemption. When the battle ends, she walks out into the dawn for this beautiful death sequence.